Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, lovers of small businesses and good stories in general. Welcome to episode 108 of Small Business War Stories. Today was a great episode. It's a little different. I talked to Chris Mercer, who just goes by Mercer, and he is an expert in things that have to do with measurement marketing, which means understanding the metrics of your business. Now, this is a topic that most businesses nowadays have an online presence of some sort, whether it be a WordPress site or some kind of a storefront on the web. And most small business people that I've come across, including myself at one stage, did not have a great grasp and a handle on what was going on with that traffic, with those conversions. And he demystifies this and makes it really easy to access, to understand how you can get started, to understand who is visiting your website, how you can convert them, and how you can do a better job at growing your business based on all your hard work. You're creating a great product, you are marketing it, but then people are coming to your site and some of them are dropping off and you don't know why. And Chris, or Mercer, I should say, he demystifies this a lot for us. And he also, they have a lot of really cool training courses and things we go into that can help you dig deeper into how to do this. But even like talking about a source medium report for Google Analytics and understanding exactly what's going on and like having the first little setup on Google Analytics. And he explains how to do this for you to understand what's going on is a huge, huge step forward. So it's a little bit daunting, but don't miss this episode if any part of your business is on the web, meaning like, do you have a website? You should listen to this episode because it'll really help you grow your business. You owe it to yourself to learn this stuff. This episode is brought to you by Proven.com. Proven is a company that I started, and it is a small business hiring tool. If you need to hire for your small business, go ahead on over to Proven.com, and we have a great resource for small businesses. At blog.proven.com. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode, Small Business War Stories number 108 with the great Mercer. And we are live here in beautiful Austin, Texas. And today I have the pleasure and honor to sit down with Mercer, who is the co-founder of measurementmarketing.io.
Exactly.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And you're like Prince. You have one name. Mercer.
I do. It's funny because in certain like past lives I sort of was the Chris, but there's always another Chris in the room, and then it was like, you're the big Chris, the blonde Chris at the talk, and I'm like, you know what, just go by your last name. It's a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I know who's talking about me.
Yeah, Mercer's got a good ring. Boom.
There you go.
Hey, I'm Mercer.
Done. Mic drop.
Well, welcome to the show. You and I met through some mutual friends here in Austin with some business groups. And you have a really interesting story, and you do some really interesting things that I think can provide a lot of value to our audience. I also want to understand a little bit better how you got started in this business. You had a path, which I want to learn about, is how you went from a more traditional career path to setting out on your own, which is something that a lot of listeners in the show either have done or are thinking about doing. But let's start, what's the origin story of what you do? So how did you decide, how did this get started? Why did you decide to start measurement marketing?
So measurement marketing came about, I guess my evolution of kind of the foundation of that was the jumping into online, right? And this was back in 2011, coming in from a corporate job, which I didn't really enjoy all that much at that point in time. It was like my best and worst job. But at that point, it was becoming the worst job, and I knew that I needed to make some choices and get back out. I had an entrepreneurial bug already. I had some businesses earlier on when I was much younger. And so I was familiar with being an entrepreneur, so that wasn't that big of a deal. So I get online and I basically created a WordPress site to teach people how to do WordPress sites and build their own sites. And that was really it. That led into, okay, well, there's a lot of cool training, which is great, but how much for you to build my site? So then I had to, the market's coming to me saying, well, I want you to build the site. I'm like, well, I got to figure out how to do outsourcing and leverage and everything else. So I learned that, brought a team. Now I've got a web development agency. And then it was, well, how do you develop a difference between you and the rest of the web development agencies? Because everyone's doing that. Mm-hmm. So for us at the time, CRO, which stands for conversion rate optimization, was just coming into really the States as a big push, which was not just, okay, get traffic to your site, but let's optimize that traffic, right? Let's optimize those conversion rates. Let's make them better. So the conversion rate being the number of people who are actually taking the action you want them to take, that percentage. And so we did CRO. And so we were like, oh, we're going to develop your site and then we're going to optimize the site. Well, in order to optimize it, you have to know where you start. You got to know your numbers. You got to measure. And so we started using Google Analytics and setting up goals and tracking, how many people were becoming leads on the site and purchases and everything else. And I would show some of the clients, like, hey, we built your site. And here's this thing. And in Google Analytics is where it shows your goal. And everyone would just sort of stop me right there and be like, oh, let's go back to that Google Analytics thing again. And then all of a sudden people would reference and refer people to us to set up their analytics and talk to them about their analytics. And then I had this little light went off and I was like, this is the sweet spot. This is the thing that nobody else is doing, which is working and helping people to use tools that are out there that are free, that do amazing things, but just nobody knows how to use them, and help people understand their numbers and know their numbers. And that's where we really flipped from kind of doing the web design and everything else. All that got shut down because everybody else does that. And we weren't going to be the best in the world at that. I just knew that. It's not my personal passion. But the numbers and figuring out, like, okay, not only what the numbers are, but can you trust them? How do you know you can actually trust them? Then what do you do with them, right? Now that you have all of that, how do you can actually steer the ship? How do you steer your marketing? How do you grow your business based upon your numbers? Because really the numbers, it's your market, right? It's your own customers kind of leaving clues as to what you need to do next. And so just really, when we realized that was the market, that's when we pivoted. We created measurementmarketing.io, and then that's been what we've been doing ever since. So that's sort of the origin story of getting from online to what we do now with measurementmarketing.io.
Got it. Okay, so you are focused then on helping people understand how traffic to their website translates into customers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's tracking the path, right? It's going from the customer journey of, I don't know who you are as a brand, to now I'm aware of you as a brand, to I'm engaging with you as a brand, to now I'm a customer of the brand, to I'm a loyal referring customer of the brand, right? Something like that. And going through and tracking that pipeline, and then figuring out, how do you move people from, it's just a typical sales pipeline, right? Like, how do you move people from prospect all the way through to awareness and engagement and ultimately to customer?
Who is this for? Is this for people only in the digital, in kind of like the software world, or do people with brick and mortar businesses use this? Is this for anybody with a website? Like, how do you think about your customers?
For us, it's people that are doing e-commerce. They're doing the transaction online.
Okay.
It's 100% for that, because these tools are really built to measure websites, right? So it's tools like Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, Google Data Studio does dashboarding and things like that. Yeah. So for the most part, it is not the brick and mortar crowd, because they're a little harder to track that. Now, that said, the strategies are the same. It's just that the tools would be different, right? And we do a lot of training on how to use the specific, tag manager and analytics and how to apply all that stuff. But those same strategies, you could still say, okay, well, if you're just using a little clicker, at work, or you're using a spreadsheet at work, like, that's fine. If that's what you're doing brick and mortar, the strategies would still be the same. You can still track your customer pipeline, even though you've got a brick and mortar. If you're at a dentist or whatever, you still have that there. It just, you may not use Google Analytics to do it because you've got physical people coming in.
What if you were a company? So I'm just thinking of a few guests that have been on the show. So if you're making guitars in Michigan, or if you're making handbags in New Orleans, or women's shoes in St. Louis, and you are selling a combination of through wholesalers and also direct to consumer, is that something that you could help people with, as long as you're doing direct-to-consumer sales?
It wouldn't be our sweet spot, not where we really are. Again, the strategies would still apply, because you still have a pipeline. You still have to say, okay, I got to get X amount of my product to a wholesaler, so that X amount of that ends up getting sold and doesn't come back, and whatever the deals are that you have. So there's still numbers that you can measure. But again, you probably wouldn't be using things like Google Analytics and Tag Manager and Data Studio to do that. So for us, our sweet spot as far as a customer is going to be people that have a website. They've got, whether it's like a Shopify store, or their own little WordPress installation. There's doing kind of more like direct response, kind of like what Ryan Dyson, digital marketer, and his team does with the direct response style stuff. Like, anybody like that for sure is going to be helpful
Okay, but
outliers.
now if you're making say handbags in New Orleans and you sell direct to consumer and you have a Shopify setup,
Then 100%.
yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
Okay,
If you're
because I
selling
think
it online,
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah, because
then
I
you
think
can
a
use
lot
these
of people
tools.
are doing that. I think
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
do
people
too.
are doing direct, and I think
Yeah.
the advent of a lot of these technologies has meant that there's a democratization of the process of the I guess not, well, I shouldn't say the process, but the idea of being able to be out on your own doing things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the tools
Yeah.
are available to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Like it used to be, you just didn't have this ability to see what was going on, to have that visibility into the business or into your business model. So you didn't know if it was working or not. Best case, you would say, well, okay, I sold something, so I have a result, or I didn't sell something, so I have a result of not selling.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know how I sold it or how I didn't sell it. In other words, I don't know where was it because no one was aware?
Yeah.
Because they didn't engage, or maybe they did engage, but then they just didn't really consider the purchase. And that's where I need to focus my message in. And so if you don't have that visibility into that path,
Yeah.
then you get the result, which is great. But without knowing kind of how you did it, you can't replicate it, or you can't stop doing the thing that you're doing that's killing it. Right. And so that's where these tools are. Like, again, Google Analytics, free. Tag Manager, free. Data Studio, free. Right? Having all of that information that's free, that's available to you as a tool. Like, absolutely, if you got a Shopify site, it's built in. You just
So
pop
I
it in,
know
it goes
I know
in.
what Google Analytics does. I don't know what the other two do. What is a tag manager?
Good question. So Tag Manager, relatively new. It's been out for about since 2012. It's kind of where they came out when it was kind of new, and it's gotten wide adoption now. But essentially, what a Tag Manager is, the way I like it is, I always think about this in terms of like movie characters almost. But in the Lord of the Rings, I think it was, with Gandalf, was like, you shall not pass. That type of thing. Like, that's kind of what Tag Manager is. Tag Manager is like this gatekeeper, and it's like this, and that's always how I picture it. For some reason, it's like this old wizard-like guy, but he's witnessing every behavior that's happening on the site. So he sees everything. He sees people clicking on buttons. He sees people as they scroll up and down the page. He sees people as they go from one page to another page. He sees people as they buy. He sees every action that's happening on the site, but he doesn't do anything. So you can train Tag Manager to say things like, hey, when somebody scrolls 50% of the way down and then they click on this other button, then go tell Facebook that they're a lead, or go tell Google Analytics that they're a lead, or whatever. And you start training it. So Tag Manager is aware of everything that's going on. And then you can train it to say, well, if this, and this happened, then go do this thing, right? Go tell the platforms. Then the platforms like Google Analytics, they're there to store the behaviors. Like, that's how I look at analytics. It's just a big giant filing cabinet that stores a bunch of behaviors. It's a behavioral database. That's what it's for. And so it stores all the information, but it's being told what to store by Tag Manager.
Yeah.
So Tag Manager sees everything based on, hey, somebody showed up on a page. Great. I was told I'm supposed to go tell Google Analytics they're on the page. I'm going to give Google Analytics the page details.
Yeah.
So now Google Analytics can store that, and then you use Data Studio for visualization, which is a fancy name to say dashboards, right? So if you ever see those monitors where it's like, here's the number of new clients we just got today, like a big fancy dashboards, it does it for free, and it hooks into Google Analytics. So then you can go to this Data Studio and create this dashboard that says, here's what our sales are for today, or here's where our sales are from Facebook or from email, right? Whatever you really want it to say, it can say, which is the power of it. Because instead of just a report, like analytics, and I'm sure a lot of people have done this, I know I did in the beginning, you jump into analytics and then you're like, you click on a few things and then you're like, oh my God, like this rabbit hole of data. And you have no idea how to get out. You have no idea what to do with it. You're overwhelmed. You start getting frustrated because you don't know what's going on.
So what's a good point to start? I mean, that's definitely happened to me before.
Yeah, for sure. If you're just starting out, you don't have Tag Manager, you don't have Data Studio, you would start out with analytics, because at least get something stored. And almost every major platform out there, WordPress, Shopify, WooCommerce, like they all have integrations that are built in to get the information into analytics, right? I don't think those are the best way to do it. I think Tag Manager is, but it's like a level up, right? So again, just starting out, get the information into analytics. There's a report in Google Analytics called the Source Medium Report.
Okay.
It is by far the best report that exists in Google Analytics, and it will take care of 80% of what you need it to, of what you're going to go to analytics for. So that report, if you go into your, in the left-hand navigation of Google Analytics, there's a report called Acquisition, and underneath that it says All Traffic, and underneath that it says Source Medium. So you click on that. And what it'll show you is, in one report on the left-hand side, it'll show you all the different identities of all of the different traffic sources. So it'll say like, hey, measurementmarketing.io referral. That means the traffic came in from measurementmarketing.io. Or it'll say facebook.com, or it'll say Google, or it'll say email, or whatever else you have set up, right? So all of the different traffic sources come in, and Google Organic tells you it came from Google Search, right? So you have all the different identities of the traffic coming in. Then as you look across that report, so you start on the left-hand side and you look across, it'll start showing you all the different actions people took, like how many pages are they seeing, how long are they staying. And then on the extreme right of that report is the results. So it'll show you the e-commerce, how much actually money did that traffic source create, or what goals did they achieve, So in that one report, you can do a whole ton of navigation, and that's the fastest way to get the source medium report. Yes, okay. It is the fastest way to get that feeling of progress of like, oh my God, I finally used this thing for something, versus just seeing people on my pages. Because a lot of people they don't know what to do with it. Source medium is absolutely the first thing you got to
That's where you start.
Thing, yeah.
Okay, and how much setup does that take? Do you just drop in the code into your page, or what do you need? How do you?
It's a good question, and I think a big misconception around Google Analytics. So yes, it's easy to get it connected, quote unquote. Either you pop it on a page, use a plugin, Shopify, just put the little number. They'll ask you for your account number. Put your account number in there. They'll send all the data to it, right? So it's the integrations are almost the easiest part of it. The interesting part about analytics, and this is the thing that I do not think is apparent. But once you know it, you always learn this lesson, is you have to customize it. Mm-hmm. So you can't just hook it up and then be like, great, it's going to tell me everything I ever wanted to know. It's not the case. It started collecting data, which is great, but you've got to customize it. So for example, if I have a question around which email is creating a sale, let's say I have a customer journey where I do a content marketing and I say, Facebook, I'm going to do a bunch of Facebook paid ads and I'm going to send them to a blog post. And then that blog post is going to ask them to become a lead, some sort of lead magnet offer or something, so they become a lead. Then now they're in my email system. My email sends them back to purchase, right? And so I've got maybe 7 emails in an autoresponder or something that causes them to create the purchase, and they buy. What analytics will do is it'll say, oh, okay, well, email caused the sale. Facebook maybe assisted in the sale. I can see things like that. But if I want to know, like, well, which email was it? Was it the first one? Was it the second one? Was it the third one? You have to customize that information. Google Analytics has no idea what you mean by first, second, or third.
Sure.
But it can, as long as you customize it. So there's these things. And again, anybody listening to this, you just Google it because you'll see lots of resources on how to use them. But the thing is, UTM is what you want to look for. These little UTM parameters. And there's you can tag it and you can say, well, this is the source of my traffic. So let's say for us, we use Infusionsoft for our email service. So I would say, well, the source is Infusionsoft. Then it would say, what's the type of traffic, what they call the medium? And I would say, well, it's email. And then they might say, okay, what campaign, like what product or service are you selling? I might say, Measurement Marketing Academy.
Yeah.
Then they would say, okay, what details do you want me to know about this traffic source? And I would say, well, I want you to know that it's email number 2. And then when they click on that link, all that information is passed into Google. So now if Google says, oh, you sold $1,000, I can click in and say, okay, what caused it? It'll say, oh, email, Infusionsoft email. And I say, great, which email? It'll say email number 2. Because it knows that. And it knows that through those things called UTMs, which again, if you just Google those, there's so many things out there.
Okay, so if I've never done Google Analytics for my, let's say I have I make wallets.
Yep.
And I sell my wallets with a Shopify store.
Yep.
And I'm just getting into Google Analytics. I want to understand where my campaigns are working, how my email is working, and what's working to actually drive sales. The first thing I'll do is use the source medium, you said, report?
Source medium report is where everything sort of ends up.
Okay.
So source medium report is where everything ends up.
Okay.
And then it will by default make its best guess. Okay. Right, but you need to, and you can start there. You can just sort of say, let's just see what's there.
That's the first level, and then the second thing you do is you
make it better.
Learn more about UTM tags, so you can, or UTM. Is it UTM tag or just UTM?
We mostly UTM tags is kind of how we reference it.
Okay, and then that allows you to get more specific as to what is leading you.
That's exactly right. It helps you to sort of level up. And that's how this game is played when it comes to data. Like, don't worry about the perfect tracking system. Like, they don't exist. There's always it always gets a little better, a little better, a little better. So get what you can now, right? Get something good, then get better. And so good might be, okay, I know that because I don't tag any of my traffic, because nobody does in the beginning because you don't know you're supposed to. So I know that Google Organic is causing sales. And I know that this other site, I've got maybe 3 or 4 other sites that are referring me traffic and they're causing some sales. Like, that's still useful. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can't see anything about your emails causing sales, right? You just don't see that because you're not tagging it. That's okay. Then you at least know this other stuff, and that's good because that's better than anybody else does. Then tag your emails. Now, when you come back to that report, it's that much better, right? And then if you're like, well, man, I tagged all my emails, but I forgot to tag which one's which. I wanted to know if they clicking on email number 1, 2, or 3, and I didn't tag that. Okay, well, no problem. Then you go back and tag that. Now going forward, you will now see that. And you can sort of see how it gets better and better and better. And that's how the platform works.
Let's talk a little bit about the psychological barrier of this, because I think for a lot of people, these things, and this is why I'm trying to break it down to its very essential, like base entry-level components, right? Because I think for a lot of people, if you're in technology, if you're in like, you know, this kind of world, all of these things are like they're their own language and their own thing, and they make sense in your head as like how the chess pieces move together, right? Yep. And I think you would agree with me that it's actually not that complex once you get to understand it. Yeah. However, there is like this psychological barrier that exists for a lot of people. I was like, oh, I'm not a tech person.
I'm not a numbers person.
Yeah, I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a tech person.
Yeah.
And like all these kind of self-defeating beliefs that we've 100%. All had at some point.
Yes.
And if you're like me, you've had them at some point as well. And I'm still learning every day about a lot of these things. How do you overcome that? Like, what is something that you've seen as effective for people to, I guess, start seeing themselves as more like, I can do this? Because this is stuff that's essential for businesses in the 21st century that sell online to succeed, right? And a great majority of businesses out there, short of you having only, I guess, a brick and mortar location, but even a lot of businesses that do have brick and mortar locations also sell online. Anybody who sells anything online, you know, down to like a wallet or a pencil, can benefit from this.
Yep.
What are some of the, like, I guess, self-management tactics that you've seen people be successful with in making this less daunting and more accessible?
So because we focus so much on training, right? We have different levels of training in our company. We've practiced this a lot. And we are definitely known, like one of the popular feedback things that we hear back is, this is not the first time I've heard about Google Analytics, but it's the first time I took action.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is we break it down, and anybody can do this, but break it down, whatever the thing is you're trying to tackle, break it down to the simplest possible, smallest action you can take that will still feel like progress. Mm-hmm. Because if you do that, like in the example of UTM tags, and again, I'm not saying that this is the first step for everybody, but if you've got your source medium report and you understand that and you want to level it up, then you start doing UTMs. You click on a link of a UTM, you can instantly see in Google Analytics that it works. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like, it just changes your world. Like we had a client that was a company that was selling products to grocery stores. So they had a physical product, they were selling to grocery stores, distributing to grocery stores. They would follow up with their distributors through email. And they wanted to know, are the distributors actually like clicking on the links in the email? Are they showing up on the pages? Now they could see some page views light up. They could see that the brochure page lit up or whatever it was in Google Analytics, but they had no idea what was causing that to happen. So we did a little thing in their training, and we set up the UTMs, which is just a bunch of little parameters that go in the URL, right? So it's a very simple thing to do once you see it. And again, practice it. And don't worry about if you screw it up the first few times. Everybody does that. Yeah. So just accept that that's going to be a thing, right? But as soon as she clicked on it, we went into analytics and we saw where it said, you know, email, her email, the specific email that it was. So she actually knew who the distributor would have been at that point that had read it. So she could actually kind of see like, oh, this distributor now, I understand this distributor is able to see her emails. And all of a sudden, you know, and the message and everything. And she just stopped, and you could tell, like, you know, she was just like, holy crap, like I can actually do this. Like, I can see my emails. Yeah. I can see if somebody read me. I'm like, yeah. And she was like, it just changed how she thought about what was possible. Yeah. And that's what happens is you instantly go, your world, it's almost like you're wandering around this dark cave and you got this little pen light. And then all of a sudden somebody gives you this big giant flashlight. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden you get a big giant floodlight. Then all of a sudden you find the light switch, right? And the whole thing lights up and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea what I didn't know. Yeah. And it makes it a lot easier, right? You can get through the cave a lot faster if you have lights turned on. And that's kind of what the numbers stuff will do. Mm-hmm. Okay. So breaking it down to its smallest possible component to get the win.
Now, what you offer, is it more training, or do you teach people how to fish, or do you sell fish, or what's your
combination with 3 levels? So we have a do-it-yourself, which is kind of like online academy, the Measurement Marketing Academy, we call it, and then we have things called win courses, which are very courses developed to help you get started with Google Analytics or Tag Manager, or Data Studio, or whatever. Then we've got done with you trainings, the next level up, where we work with teams mostly at that point with companies, and they want to change their culture so they have a measurement culture. Mm-hmm. And so we help them with their tagging and come up with systems and really help teach them to use these tools, but then change the entire team so that the company knows its numbers and is being run by numbers. Then there's the done for you, where we have certified measurement marketing partners that we certify, that we work with, that will, if clients need this information done, we normally talk to them, make sure we got a good fit for them, and that we're able to deliver on it. Then we'll refer them out to one of the certified measurement marketers so they can do that.
And if any of our listeners are interested in maybe like, they're like, okay, I am going to learn this. So do you have like an intro course or something like that? And how much does that cost?
Yeah, they're roughly around $100, give or
That's
take.
amazing.
I mean, everything's a little different on the different pricings.
For $100, people who listen to this podcast were like, this has always been something that I knew I wanted to do, but I'm like, overwhelmed by it. Like, you can actually get started and get going with this.
Yeah, and the support, like work with, whether it's us or somebody else, but work with somebody who you can go and ask questions about, right? And so like our courses have a really strong support network. We have instructors that are on standby. So if you're like, I can't figure this out, what's wrong with UTMs? You can just send a little chat, and an instructor will actually help you out with stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a lot of life operates with Pareto efficiency, right? Which is like the 80-20 rule, that 80% of outcomes comes from 20% of inputs and vice versa. Would you say that source medium report in the UTMs is about the 80?
100%. Yeah, because UTMs end up all that little customized tracking where you say this is an email. For example, at the end of this, you're going to probably ask me, where can people find out more about you, right? I'm going to give you a link. That link, when they type it in, you're going to see UTMs at the end of that link. That's going to identify that they came from this podcast. Yeah. So I know, okay, the traffic came, not just that they showed up to my site, but they showed up from a podcast. So I'm able to track that stuff back. Yeah. That's all those details.
Let's run a campaign. We'll put we'll send people to you from our website. That's awesome. Okay. Very cool. So that's, if you can just get started with doing that, with everything, these little initial successes lead to more confidence down the road.
It's momentum, right? Because that's the problem with analytics. I think in general, people jump into that program, then they start clicking around, then they see that there's these goals. Then they're like, well, let me go see what a goal is. Maybe I got to go set up a goal. It's like, oh, I'm going to set up a goal. Oh, there's 4 different types of goals. There's an event goal. What's an event goal? I don't know. Now I got to set up events. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, like none of that's a win. So you didn't make any progress. You don't feel like you're making progress at all. And all you now know is there's a whole bunch of stuff you have no idea what it is. And now you're just like, if anything, you feel disempowered. Then you start feeling frustrated and overwhelmed because you're like, the next guy I know next to me does it. My competition's doing it. I know people are talking all about it, and I can't figure this out. And it's frustrating. Yeah. Right. But if you said, okay, I'm going to focus on source medium. I'm going to go in there. I'm listening to what this guy said. And we're going to go in there and we're going to go to source medium. I don't care about tagging. I haven't customized it at all. That's okay. 80%. Right? Get your 80%. Get your good. Go to the source medium report, identify your traffic sources that are bringing you traffic, and then look toward the results end of things. Right? Now, if the results end of things all says 0 because you haven't set that up, guess what your next step is? You go, cool, I need to set up some goals. And then just go set up some simple goals. Now you know to set up goals. Yeah. And then stop after that. Then you go back to that report after you let it run some traffic some more, right? Yeah. Get some more people to your site. Then go back to that report, and you'll see those same traffic sources all being identified, only this time, with those visitors that come in new after you set up the goal, you'll see the goals reporting. Because now what just happened is you went good, which was using the report. Then you made it better by adding goals to it. And then maybe you're like, well, yeah, I really want to do e-commerce. And so then you learn e-commerce. Then you do that. But now all of a sudden you're coming from that progress and you get momentum, and that gives you confidence that you can do this.
And I guess if you listen to this in audio and you during your drive or you work out, however it is, and you listen to Small Business War Stories, this can sound a little bit abstract, but at the very least we're putting it in context that it's something that with some effort you are on the person who wants to learn it on their behalf, like they can go ahead and with $100 get started and actually get going with things.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to do a course, absolutely, right? Like it's obviously, consider the source of me saying this, but but yeah, it'd be great if you did the course. But even if you didn't, even if you were like, man, I don't have $100, great. Get in your Google Analytics, jump into that source medium report, and look at that. Now that you understand what it's telling you, which is here's the identity of the traffic sources, and then here are the results, and it actually shows you the different actions that are happening to get to those results. Yeah. Now the thing makes a little more sense. And just understand that one report will give you 80% of what you need from GA.
Got it. Now, this is a world that changes a lot, right? So probably, if not daily, like definitely weekly or monthly. If we get like just a couple levels deeper, like what's next? Like what are the things that you're seeing out there that are happening that are going to be true a year from now that are not true today?
I think there'll be a big push toward trying to figure out proper attribution. So there's something called traffic attribution, which is If you're on, you run a Facebook campaign, and let's say you're a local dentist office and you're doing a Facebook campaign to get people to sign up to, set an appointment or something on your website.
Yep.
So you would pay Facebook a bunch of money, then you get a bunch of leads on your site, and you want to be able to see, like in something like Google Analytics, you want to be able to see, okay, was it because of the Facebook campaign, or was it because their friend recommended them to see the site? Like, how did this happen, right? You want to be able to attribute that result to a specific traffic source. So in the beginning, when all this stuff started, it was easier to do that because there wasn't a lot of it out there.
Right.
But now there's Facebook. And so now let's say you do Facebook and you come to the site, but then you leave, but then you retarget me on Google Ads, and then I do it. Well, does Facebook get the credit for it, or does ads get the credit for it?
That's a philosophical question as much as it is a technical
It's funny
one.
you say that, because it is a little art, right? Like there is science behind it, where you're like, well, I'm going to give them, I can tell the model to say 50% to Facebook and 50% to, but it becomes a little artwork, because you in attribution, there's like 7 different ways you can do it. Then you can customize it, and then because you can change the formula all the time, I'm like, that's not an answer. Like, that's not a thing. I hate that, right? It's like, well, unless it's just a concrete, like I can do something with it. But if it's like, well, I don't like my answer, so I'm going to change the formula. Right. Well, then that's hard. And all the platforms, the interesting thing about it, especially as you scale up as a business online, in that example, let's say we had a sale where Facebook sent me to a page I didn't buy, but then I got retargeted by Google Ads or something, right? And then I bought. So I have sold one widget, right? So I've sold one thing. If I go back to Facebook, Facebook says, oh, I sold one thing, because that's what it thinks it did, because it can't see ads. If I go back to Google Ads says, oh, you sold one thing too, right? So I sold one thing because it can't see what Facebook sees at all. So the platforms say you sold 2 things, and they will both say I sold a thing for $100 and I sold a thing for $100. Congratulations, you just made $200. But really, you sold one widget for $100, right? And there's a lot of confusion. There's so much confusion because of that, right? Where there's this duplication of all the different platforms. So I think attribution will be the biggest focus, because especially as a business scales out, they have these problems where they're like, it's a joke, but it's true. Like, if as a business, if we all made the money that Facebook said we made, like we would all be great, but they over-report. There's errors in the implementations. There's lots of things like that. And there's back in the day, it was just like get money into the thing because it's new and it's great. And now it becomes this optimization wave, which is now we got to make it more efficient. Right now, I can't just spend $10,000 a day or $10,000 a month or $10,000 a year or $10 a day. I need to make sure it worked and how it worked, so I can do it better the next time.
But now this is like level 10, and like in our little, we're talking about how to get started levels 1 and 2.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. So
and you can be very successful without even.
Oh my! I have talked to clients who will come to us and they're doing 7 figures a month, right, in sales. 7 figures a month, don't have analytics. Like, they just hadn't needed it. They had a really good offer. They hit the mark at the exact right time. Now, the reason they need analytics now is because things are starting to change a little bit, and they don't know why. So because they have no visibility, and now they're like, oh my gosh, we actually care about numbers, and we got to get this in. So eventually, everybody will need this. Yeah. But it does not make it a prerequisite. If you have a good offer and a good market match, and you're taking care of your customers, like that's at the end of the day, that's what it needs to get started, right?
Yeah, all this is just a reflection and a numbers reflection of the actions that you're taking and the message you're delivering to your customers.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time on this podcast. I sat down with Ryan Dice and we talked about like how to create like your story, your brand's character, like a comic book character
diamond.
Yeah, the character diamond and all the things. And then Daniel Whittington at Wizard Academy talking about how to tell your story in a way that like. So there's all these kind of right and left brain things that need to come together for any of this to work. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to hear about your personal story. So you came from radio advertising to staffing to now this. So that is a fascinating story.
Yeah, I so the way that it worked is I actually started as a DJ back in the day, right? So it was I came in.
You do have a good radio voice.
Thank you. Yes,
right?
That's what.
If I had your radio voice, I'd be president.
There you go. So that's actually exactly how I got this job. I was working at Little Caesars, if everybody remembers the pizza commercials, and you'd answer the phone, and I would have a lot of people. Be like, oh my God, like you have a great voice. Yeah. And it was just weird to hear that.
Hello and welcome to Movie Phone.
Pretty much, exactly. So I had my girlfriend at the time was like, well, you should go see if you can get a job at the radio station. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So finally I do. I walk into the local radio station that's there. This was in College Station, Texas. And I go into the radio station and I'm like, hey, just a guy comes up to me and this other guy was talking to him. He comes up to me and he's like, yeah, I can help you. And I was like, well, I just want to know how to be a DJ. And he's like, oh, well, just give us your tape. And I'm like, I don't have a tape. Like, he's like, why are you here? And it's because people told me I have a good voice and I should be a DJ. Like, that's why I'm here. He's like, all right, well, schedule a time and we'll do a tape for you. And I do it. And it ends up being the one guy was a program director, which is the guy who's kind of the boss of the DJs. And then there was the other guy was the general manager of the station. So I come in, I make the tape. They call me back and they're like, we were going to make a spot for you. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then I got into the audio aspect of it. And I loved it. But it does not pay a lot of money.
Right.
So I noticed the salespeople making money, and I was like, well, how do you do that? Right. And that's what got me into sales and marketing, the psychology of everything.
Yeah.
So I go from radio and I moved into sales, and then I moved into sales management, another station. And then I actually got into, that was my first little entrepreneurial kick, is I created a weekly entertainment, I was technically a monthly entertainment guide at the time. Then I moved it to a weekly entertainment guide. And then I bought a bar, and we had a little nightclub, and we would have bands come in.
Where was this?
This is all in College Station.
All in College Station. Yeah. Did you go to A&M? Is that why?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so we did those, and that was like multiple lessons. I was like early 20s when I was doing this. So it was a lot of fun, but I was also like this Superman where I was like, you know what we don't need to do? Sleep. Like, who cares about sleep? I'm just going to hustle, right? So I was that guy, which I get all the hustle world out there. We didn't call it hustle back then. We just worked hard, but same difference, right? It was just like, don't sleep, keep going. And I did it for a long time. But it was mentally disastrous, right? Because I would just wake up and there was nothing there. So at the end, I was like, okay, I decided that I was building my little empire in a place that I didn't want to be forever. So I'm going to give away everything, which I did. I gave away everything, and I moved to Portland. And I was like, if I'm any good at any of this, I will figure out how to do it
Oregon
again.
or Maine?
Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon. So I did it on the West Coast, loved it. I had a friend of mine that had just moved up there.
Yep.
So
I lived in Bend for a while.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So love the Northwest. Yeah. Love it. And so I went in there, and I actually moved into car sales.
Okay.
When I got up there. So I'd done restaurant for a little while, which was a lot of fun. But I wanted to get something a little more. And so I got into car sales, and I had applied for a job at a radio station there, which I was waiting. Meanwhile, I was getting this job. I got to pay the bills, right? So you did this, and I was decent at car sales. I like that business, but it's cliche for a reason, right? Like, there's a lot of people in there who I don't know that people don't trust all the time. I understand why. I always did my best. Like, I was never that guy. That wasn't my character. So but I liked it. And then I get this job, and the guy's like, or this call, and he's like, yeah, whatever the radio station was. He's like, I'm going to offer you a sales spot. I was like, oh, cool. So I go in. I'm going to go quit. And the general manager of the car dealership, he says, well, listen, he goes, I heard you're going to quit. It's like, yeah. He's like, you mind chatting me with a little bit? It's okay. Come to his office. He writes me.
Did he not sit you down and say, I'm going to go talk to my manager?
No, yeah, right. Exactly. He's going to do a turn. Yeah. So he comes in, and he goes, well, hang on a second. Writes me a check for $500. And he says, this is for the next 15 minutes. I just want you to pay attention. And I'm like, okay, you have my attention, right? Like, no one's ever done something like this to me. And so I'm like, okay. So he's like, listen, I understand why. He goes, what do you want to leave for? And it's like, well, I don't understand why you purposely upset people all the time and make this process really difficult. Like, if I know somebody can get the car for $250 a month, like, do it. Move the car and keep it going, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, listen, he goes, you will learn more about the psychology of humans in this business than you will anywhere else. And he was right. And he goes through and he talks about sort of all the different psychological tactics that are involved in the sales process that they do, the way they bring in emotion like they do. Like, it's a dance. And if you don't dance, people won't buy the car. They'll go to someplace else, they'll spend 12 hours dancing, and then they'll buy the car. And it's fascinating to think that, because for my brain, I'm all about efficiency. So I'm like, do you want the car? Yes. How much do you want to pay? Great, I can do that. Awesome, here you go. Moving on. I hate the negotiation part. I'm just like, here, put a sticker on it and sell them, right? People don't want to do that. They will go to another dealership if you do that. They'll be like, well, no, you're probably trying to screw me. This happened too fast. It felt weird. And so people would go to other, and I realized this. And it was fascinating. Like, the human psychology is fascinating when it comes to that. So I learned a massive, massive amount about sales in that business while I was doing that. I moved into mortgages, which was kind of the up and coming thing back before the bust that had come through. And then the bust came. And at the time I had gone to, there was a big company I was a part of, or as a regional manager. And then the company shut down overnight. Because at the time I was back in corporate America, and I was like, okay, you know what? They want you to go home after 50 or 60 hours. Like, that's for an entrepreneur. That's like retirement. You know, I'm like, this is cool. I make a bunch of money. I'm literally like 2 levels below the CEO. Like, I see the CEO in the elevator. I'm good. And then one day they're like having a conference call and they're like, there's armed security guards and the entire company with branches all over the country is just gone. And I'm like, wow, like how can that, like, there is no security. I'm my security, right?
Yeah.
So I reeled around for a while.
Hold on. Before you move on, that's an incredibly powerful statement. There is no security. I am my security.
I'm a security, period.
Because I think that's what a lot of times people see entrepreneurship or like being out setting out on your own as risky.
Yep.
But ultimately, really depending on other people for your paycheck and for your income and for like everything that happens in your life is way riskier.
It's an illusion.
Yeah.
Right. It's an illusion. So like because you're relying on somebody else's rules and decisions and you have no idea, it's a black box, and maybe it works and that's great. But then how many other companies have you seen that are just brand names one day, gone the next?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're talking about GE now being in trouble. Like that used to be the pillar of everything. And now it's like even that company is like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's got these there's always downturns, don't get me wrong. I don't think GE's going away. But you see these big, gigantic brands that just aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Kodak. Like that used to be a big deal back in the now. You would never think that somebody would be like, okay, Kodak's going to be gone.
Merrill Lynch,
right? Yeah. So, but regardless, so in the downturn, when the downturn happened, I found myself in the ability to take my skills, because I always felt I was very good at what I did in working with people and helping them to take action, right? In my case, it was taking action for buying a car, and then it was taking action on the mortgage. At the time of buying a car, the reason I got out of that is because I didn't personally feel great about it all the time, right? And I really wanted that all the time. Sometimes you make a good deal and it's great. And
so
it's awesome.
Did you end up staying there, or did you end up leaving? What happened in the $500 conversation?
Oh no, I ended up staying for sure.
So you stayed for a while. Okay.
Yeah, I stayed for a while, and he was right, and I learned a ton, and it was I would not trade the experience for the world. It was a fantastic. It was better than any school I've ever been in ever.
Okay.
But I still didn't personally feel great. And it's nothing against anybody who works at car dealerships or anything. I just didn't personally feel great about.
And then you went
what
to
I did.
mortgages.
Then I did mortgages because I'm like, well, I'll use my skills because at
Yep.
least you get an asset that appreciates, right? Until that wasn't the rule anymore, and all these houses are going down in value. Like, man. So then I moved into recruiting. And it was my favorite job at the time. I was a branch manager for a company, which was very entrepreneurial when I joined it. And it was awesome because they were basically like, here's your branch, run these people, make us money, right? And I was like, I get this entrepreneurial haven with somebody else messing with payroll and marketing, and it was fantastic. And so, and I could use my same skills, except now when I did my job well, some company had a great employee now, and somebody got a job. So it was like a win-win. And that's why I loved it the most. By far, my top job was that company. And then through various changes of the downturn came in, they had to make some changes on their end. And they went very structured and they became very corporate. And for me, it wasn't a good fit anymore because and they needed to make this move as a company. I totally understand it. Yeah. But for me, it wasn't a good fit anymore because it stopped becoming hey, just make us money to you need to work like this, do it this way, check these boxes, make these many points each day. And I was so structured where I was like, I cannot, I just can't do that. I need something I can create, right? So that's where we left and started into online, which again was this is 2011. At that point when we made that move. And then this is what we've been doing ever since.
So talk about that shift, because that's a pretty, you're kind of saying it as a one sentence, but that's actually like a little more complex than that, because you go from selling cars to selling mortgages to selling placements and staffing to all of a sudden all this other stuff that we talked about in the beginning of the episode, which has to do with how to learn how to do all this rather technical.
Even hearing you say that, though, for me, it's the same thing I've been doing the entire time. I help people take action. I help people get out of their own way and take an action that's going to benefit them.
Interesting.
At the time, it was to get the car. At the time, it was to get their house. At the time, it was to get a job, right? Where I'd have to sell either the company to accept somebody or for somebody to accept the company. Yeah. And then it became, let's get you using analytics. Like, this is going to be good for you. I know it's overwhelming.
How did you learn it first?
Just natural curiosity. It really was. Like I love going in and figuring out. I'm very systems oriented. I'm very structured. Yeah. I like models like that. So for me, it was natural to because I am comfortable with like a spreadsheet. I can jump in the GA and I'm a little more comfortable to figure it out. But I'm not process driven, which means if I have a process, I'll get very bored with it. So with analytics, I wanted to not just know how to use it and use it for myself. I wanted to use it and then tweak it and then play with it. And then I started going like, man, I can just tell other people like what's possible. Like this thing I found that I can do with this tool, like the things that I can answer now with this tool. And then I have this little pioneer spirit where I'm going to go back to the big city and I'm going to say like, hey guys, you got to move out west. Like, come on, you should see what's out here, right? And it was like that, like Google Analytics and numbers and the ability to use these tools is for me, like that's the edge of what's out there.
Yeah.
And so I can go out there, play with stuff, explore with stuff, and then come back and say, here's what we can do. Come on, guys. And we can just bring the wagon train over. Cool. And so in my head, that's what
I'm looking forward to learning from you. I'm going to go take a couple of these courses.
You will never look at your marketing the same way again, because it's literally like having a steering wheel that now you can steer, and you're like, oh my God, I actually understand when I make a decision in my marketing, how it actually affects and it ripples through versus just, I don't know, it didn't work, or I don't know, it worked, but I'm not sure how it worked, because that's scary. Yep. And you don't have to feel like that. Not with the tools that are out there anymore. Nobody does.
You don't have to feel like that. I like that. What's the craziest thing you've ever seen in your time with this company?
With doing what I do now?
Yeah.
The craziest thing I've ever seen. So I'm trying to think of a bunch of numbers people will be crazy, not known to be the craziest.
Yeah.
I think it is the challenge with our business is it constantly changes. It's not something that you can just set up, and I think that is a big misconception. You can just set it up like, I'm just going to set up my goals and then I'm done, right? And now I can use analytics. It's not like that, because analytics changes all the time. Yeah. Like they've changed the main code base. You had to flip out stuff. They've upgraded it. And then all the other tools that people use are doing that too. So I think the craziest thing is just the amount of how much is required to keep up with it and to realize that that is there. Like eventually, and again, not as a small company, but eventually as you get a bigger company, you need somebody who's like kind of on your team to manage this stuff, because the world is getting so much bigger. There's all these different tools. Like we talked about some of the major ones that Google does. Facebook has Facebook Analytics, which is a whole other analytics platform, right? There's other analytics platforms out there. There's things like Hotjar and tools like True Conversion that will do like click maps and show you like visually. You can actually record the screen, see how people are using your screens. Like there's so much stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the crazy, is just keeping up with everything that's out there for us.
Okay. Very cool. What would be the number one piece of advice that you have for somebody who's out there who's either running their small business or thinking about setting it on their own? Maybe they're currently at a staffing agency and they're considering, going out there, currently selling cars, currently selling mortgages. What is the number one thing that you would share about your experience in running a business and doing what you do? So
if the question is, again, I'm kind of on the corporate end of things. I'm relying on other people, and I have that inkling that I need to make that jump, right? It is not an easy jump to make. It sometimes works out amazing, and you hear about those people. But for me, that's like great. You won a lottery ticket, but that doesn't mean that lottery is my retirement now either. Like that's awesome. It happens. People win the lottery, but I'm not going to put all my money in the lottery. I would look at it as I've got to have a system and a plan, right? And I am my own security. It's possible. Like I don't even think about, is it possible? It's totally possible. Like if that's what you're thinking to yourself right now, if you're driving in the car or whatever, listening to this podcast, and like, I don't know if I can do it. You totally do it. Like that's irrelevant. Absolutely promise you can do it. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. You can do it, period. No qualms there. It's just a matter of like, how do you do it? Right. And that's where you come in with the plan. So, and then for us, like I always tell people, like we did the old fashioned way, is we came back, we had come to Austin, Texas to see a friend of ours get married, fell in love with this area. The vibe that was here was super entrepreneurial. It was fantastic. And we were like, we got to move here. And so we both had corporate jobs. We both had well-paying corporate jobs. We would go back to our jobs and we were like, okay, we're going to move in 6 months. Like that's what we're going to do. So we saved everything we could for 6 months, and we saved up basically 6 months worth of our salaries. Yeah. And so for 6 months, that's what we did. We squirreled away everything. So when we moved down to Austin, and we were like, we're going to create a business, and we have our nest egg, and that's it. Like, there was no $27 million funding for an idea or any of that stuff. Like we just saved a bunch of money and we lived off that. And I had 6 months to make things work. And then you put it out there, and just like with any other new business, you try something, and if it doesn't work, you try it again, try it again. Eventually, you just keep going. It's not a matter of if it's going to work; it's a matter of how it's going to work. And there might be 30 or 40 different hows.
Yeah, that's a really powerful thought. It's like, no, it's not whether it's going to work; it's how it's going to work.
It's not if, it's how. absolutely
Yeah.
right. And that's in your brain.
And that's
does
a mindset.
It's
Yeah,
100% mindset.
So let's
You
talk
don't think
about that
the if.
mindset, because that's really, really important. That's like I don't think we can just gloss over that, because I'm a firm believer that we are our own worst enemy. All the barriers that are many barriers, not all the barriers, but many barriers. I would say the great majority of the barriers in our life come from our own brain. So how do you get past that? I mean, you said that you're systems oriented and you've always been, but like maybe like let's say somebody's like, like how do you conquer fear? Like let's say there's this, like somebody's thinking about this. Yeah, but I have a mortgage. Yeah, but I have kids. Yeah, but what if it doesn't work? Yeah, but this other thing I did didn't work. So how do you get past that?
It's a decision. Like I hate to make it sort of like root, but it is. It's like you make that decision to be like, yeah, but I could do that. You can have that conversation.
Yeah.
But if you try to convince yourself out of having that conversation, you'll never win, because you're already in the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you start saying, well, I'm going to try to convince myself, that you're already lost, because you have to try to convince yourself. I'm like, I'm not even going to have that conversation. Is it a thing? Is it a possibility? Sure. Don't care. Moving on. Right? I acknowledge it and I move on.
You've decided that it's a possibility.
100%. It is a possibility. Everything's a possibility.
Yes.
Right? Like everything is a possibility. Everything bad and everything good. And you have the decision to say, great, I can acknowledge the bad. I don't think you push yourself away from that voice, because then it gets louder and fighting and it needs attention.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I can give it attention.
Yeah.
For that long.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, acknowledged.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you for that. I acknowledge it and I'm moving on.
I've been working on that recently, kind of marrying the Buddhist, like Zen precept of acceptance, of like, if like, let's say you feel scared, you feel upset, accepting that, and then immediately using the kind of Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich, like transmuting that into like, you decide to be successful.
I can acknowledge it without engaging with it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing, is people engage with it and they have a conversation with it, and then they coddle it, and then they grow it and they feed it, and they wonder why next time it's stronger, because you paid attention to it, because you gave it your energy. And it's okay that it's there. It's there for a purpose.
Yeah.
It's there sometimes just to be like, hey man, I'm just wanting you, there is dangers out there. And I'm like, awesome. Thanks for that. Now I'm going to go here, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to take this action. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to let me know there's dangers there. Thank you. Right. But I don't need to investigate it and engage with it and get freaked out about it.
Yeah.
Right.
But for me, actually not engaging with that on a constant basis has been a process of growth, and self-knowledge has taken a long time. I mean, I think maybe for different people it may be different, but certainly for me, there's been times when I've been scared and paid too much attention to that.
It's
and
practice.
It's practice. Practice is a great way to
It's
look
100%
at it.
practice, because I wasn't the same way 10 years ago, right? If you look in so we use Asana for project management. I actually have an Asana task every single day that is a list of emotions that I call emotional charging. And I have this every single day. And this is not because I'm not a positive guy or whatever else. It's because if I don't practice it, if I don't take a moment to go, I'm feeling accomplishment right now, I'm feeling progress right now, I'm feeling momentum, energy, loving, caring, I feel like I'm valued, I feel like creative. If I don't take a second to practice those, sometimes your day doesn't provide those for you. Sometimes your day is all stress.
I'd love to see that list if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's something that I've been thinking, and I just pulled out this coin that this guy J.L. Lawson in Southern California, and it's called a worry coin, and it says worrying is like paying a debt that you don't owe, and it's a reminder that awesome. Ultimately, like, you can, like, spending time thinking about those things is just going to feed them. And
exactly
ultimately,
right.
You need to be responsible for taking that decision to take action and the decision to be successful.
Yep.
And I think that mindset's so powerful, of deciding that you're going to win. Where people get confused sometimes is like, they're like, oh, well, it's just like positive thinking, and like, like just sitting on your couch and wishing positivity is not going to be anything. Well, you can coach and program your brain for success by deciding you're going to be successful, putting those emotions in your brain, and that in turn, amazingly, almost magically, leads you to take the actions that result in the success.
And actions is the key, because no one ever said sit on a couch and think, right? Nobody ever said sit on a couch and feel, and you're gonna have a big bag of money. All of a sudden, your table turns into money. Like, that's not how it works, right? It's action. It's not if, it's how. The how is action. And like you said, your brain just needs better software. So if you're getting, and I'm really big on this, if you're getting a poor result, look at the system that's producing the result. It's not me. It's not my fault. It's not I'm a horrible person. It has nothing to do with that. It's the system that I'm using that is bad. It's the system that I'm using that's not giving me the result that I want. It's really incredible at producing this result. It's just not a result I want.
And so you have the freedom to change that system
at any time.
And that's what we forget.
100%.
Okay, that is an amazing kind of line of thought to close this out. But as you well predicted earlier in the show, where can people find you if they're interested in learning
time to
more?
see those UTMs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be taking some of your courses personally, and I cannot wait to see that list. And I also use Asana. I'm going to add that to my own processes. I've been learning so much from different guests. Like, that's what's wonderful about this podcast. And I sat down with Jeffrey Stuffings at Jester King not too long ago, and he taught me this amazing process, which I'll repeat in this episode in case somebody hasn't listened to the other one. But he sits down for an hour. I think he does it once a week. I've been doing it a couple times a week, with a cup of coffee and a piece of paper and a prompt at the top of the page, no distractions, and a 1 hour timer. And he puts a question about his business or about his life at the top of the page, and then just starts writing and starts going and basically lets his it's dedicating time for thought and for your own development of ideas without looking at your email, your text, your Instagram, the next thing, thinking about the next thing. It's just you're thinking only on that question.
I do something similar. It's a future journal. So I'll do out and say, okay, I'm 10 years out, and I'll write a journal entry about what the life is like 10 years out. Then I pull it in 5 years. Then I pull it in a year. Then I do 6 months, 3 months. Next month, the end of this week, and I do that every Sunday.
That's amazing. I've actually just started doing that, where I set 5-year goals, and then I have them 2-year goals, 1-year goals, 6-month goals, and I'm starting to do that exact same thing.
It will freak you out sometimes how well you will start predicting what your life looks like in the future. Doing that, you will start seeing coincidences everywhere, and the universe sort of just gives you this unfolding of signals. You're like, oh my god, this is.
But that's also the power, right? That we have
100%
to be able to positively impact our own lives through these, transmuting of emotions into action and into positive outcomes.
Absolutely right. The hardest part about all of this is accepting the responsibility for it. That's really it.
That's amazing. The hardest part about it is deciding that you have the power to decide.
Absolutely right.
It's amazing. Okay, so where can people find you?
So we'll do measurementmarketing.io as our site. So anybody can go to measurementmarketing.io at any time. Yeah. However, if you want to see sort of this actions of UTMs and what we were talking about, if you go to, I'll do two things. So go to measurementmarketing.io/war stories. So when you type that in, you go to your browser, type that in, and then look at where you end up. Yeah. And I'm going to create a page for everybody that will have a little, what we call the UTM builder. It'll be a free tool you can just sign up for and grab. Yep. It'll be a spreadsheet. You can get to kind of play around with it. So anybody that wants to really learn how to do this stuff, we'll give a little traffic tracker toolkit. Awesome. So everybody can get it for free. But see what that is and see where you end up, and you'll see kind of how we're doing it. Yeah. And then you can say, oh, cool, that's how I knew I came from this podcast, and this is how I know if they came from Facebook or my emails, whatever else. You can use the exact same technique that we're using. And any questions everybody has, they can always just email me, Mercer at measurementmarketing.io.
That's awesome. I have learned a tremendous amount in this podcast, and I'm sure many people in our audience have as well. So thank you so much for taking the time,
pleasure.
Mercer.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, take care. Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.